Good morning. I hope the party was okay. I'm glad you came. I would like to welcome you on the software quality track today. Our first speaker is Anisha Narang, who is working for Red Hat. Is a regular speaker on conferences in India, and today she will be talking to us about various testing stacks. Anisha, you have the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming in so early. So, a quick question to all of you here. How many of you here have done any sort of web test automation or used tools like Selenium before? Okay, nice. So what do you understand when I say testing stack? Anybody would like to answer? Okay. Choose a testing stack that works for you. I mean to say that one particular tool or library may not be able to serve the purpose of testing your application entirely. There may be different aspects to an application which may be required to be tested differently. So how do we go about building our testing stack? Going forward, I'll be touching upon some of the web test automation tools like Selenium, Watir, which tool we can use depending upon the type of our application as well as the availability of resources. Which automation libraries we can use, which testing frameworks we can use along with those. And so in this talk will mostly relate to the testing of web applications. We'll also see how we can use Cucumber, which is a behavior-driven development tool, how that tool can help. Also, I'll be taking a small example of an application so that we can relate to it and see how things work. Understanding the application. It is very important for us to understand the behavior of the application, to know the application, what are we testing. Having a clarity on the scope of the project always helps. Knowing the audience, the target audience, what combination of operating system or browsers they are using. Considering all these parameters, we can prioritize our testing methodologies. Now, once we are clear with the behavior of our application, we should create a test plan and write the test cases. Once you're done with that, you should always decide which one to automate. Do not automate just for the sake of automating, or you're automating your test cases because you can automate. Or the other side may be that you're not automating at all and you're just continuously doing a lot of manual regression because you do not want to write any code. So now also which test cases you want to automate could be the ones which may have a lot of test data or which may need to be tested repeatedly, which may involve a lot of regression. Test automation is nothing but the use of testing tool to control the execution of your tests. Suppose you have a small application today and you think that you want to stick to manual testing for it because you can go with it. But what if your application increases beyond a certain size and it may not be able, okay for you to consider it, test it manually. There may be a lot of features or edge case scenarios which may require you to click through manually. So these are the cases where test automation comes into picture. And test automation definitely helps you in reducing regression. It allows you to automate the tests which need to be tested repeatedly against the application. And there are a number of open source as well as commercial tools which are available which allow you to do test automation. So now we'll have a quick look at the sample application before we go forward. I'm sure all of you must have used some kind of paste bin sometime. So this is the Fedora paste bin which is here. The basic functionality of this application is that you input some text here, you click on paste and your paste gets created where you can share the link. So the functionality which we'll be considering is that how we can test this basic functionality. Also, we'll be touching upon some of the REST API endpoints which are provided by fpaste and how we can test that. Web application testing. Web application testing is more about validating the user flow and testing the functionality of the application available to the end user by writing some relevant automation scripts. It is about testing your web application, if the functionality is working correctly or not. It may involve some of the test cases like clicking on certain links if they navigate you to the correct page, checking if the data is correct on the page, checking end-to-end scenarios, considering end-to-end scenarios. Also, you can consider some of the negative scenarios like if the user has made an input of some unexpected data, then a correct error should be given. So these are some of the very basic test cases which can be included and automated using web test tools. Tools you can use for UI testing. Selenium. Selenium is one of the very common tools which people use when it comes to web test automation. It is an open source tool that automates browsers. It tests pages by loading them and performing certain actions on them and validating the expected outcomes. It is controlled by a lot of languages, programming languages, as well as testing frameworks. One of the advantages that I find with Selenium is that it has a Selenium IDE, which is a record and play tool. It allows you to record your scripts from the web page. So it is very easy to use. You can just click on the click to record button, do some navigation on the page, and all the actions gets recorded as a script. Later you can play that script and see if the expected outcome is what you are really looking for. But there are certain limitations to it. Selenium IDE one should use only when you're beginning to learn. But once you know how to use Selenium, you can always go write code using any of the languages you're comfortable with. Selenium IDE also provides you with a very to change the format of your test script in any of the languages like Python, Java, or Ruby with just a click of a button, so that you know how the basic script structure looks like. You can use Selenium with a lot of languages. Next, Watir WebDriver. Watir stands for Web Application Testing in Ruby. It is a Ruby gem. It's a like tool written in Ruby, and it is an open source tool. So Watir provides you a very readable API. It is based on Selenium. The Watir WebDriver API is implemented as a wrapper around the Selenium 2.0 API, and it is very easy to read and lets you write maintainable scripts. There are a couple of other tools as well which are available, like Sequely. Then there is Capybara. Capybara is again a Ruby gem. Sequely uses image recognition to identify the images on the page, and so that if there's no way to interact with the code, then maybe Sequely can come into picture. Which programming language to use? You can, if you're using Selenium, you can use a couple of other languages which you wish to. So let's have a look at the code. Now, before we have a look at the code, I would like to tell you one thing. That how do we inspect? It's very important for us before we are doing any sort of web test automation to know how we can interact with the elements on the page. So this is a text box where I need to input some text. So what I do is, I do a right click and I do inspect element. So here I see, can all of you see? So here I see that the text area has an ID paste data. We need to know that whichever HTML elements on the web page we are interacting with, what attributes they have and what are the respective values for those. Now we'll have a quick look at the script Selenium. Using Selenium, the programming language that we're using is Python. So in the first line, we import the Selenium WebDriver, which provides us with all the WebDriver implementations. Next, we import the keys class, which allows us to use the keyboard, all the keys which are available on the keyboard, and simulate what we do. The next, we are importing unit test, which is the Python's inbuilt module, unit testing module, which allows us to, which provides us with methods like setup, tear down, and helps us initialize our script and also close the test late, the browser or whatever steps we want to perform after the test. Next, so driver equal to WebDriver.Firefox. This line will simulate the action like a user opens the browser. So we create a Firefox WebDriver instance here. Next, the get method allows us to navigate to the web to a particular URL. So here we say we go to fpaste.org. Next, so there are a lot of locator elements which Selenium Python bindings provide us, like find element by ID, by class name, by XPath, and there's a list of locator elements which is available. So here we say we find element by ID, paste data. We just saw that particular text area had an ID with the value paste data. So send keys is a method which will provide us to input whatever we want to input in the text area. Next action that we want to take to create a paste is click on the paste button which was there. So that button has an ID paste button. We perform a click action on it. Now our paste is created. We go back to the next page. So this is my paste got created. I here do a right click and I see that my text is contained in a div. In a div which has a class text. This one. So I go back and I say that I want to find my element by class name method. And I find it with text. Now I hold the text of that particular element in a variable, and then I do an assertion. Now I've performed all the actions, but I need to perform an assertion to verify that whatever text I had input, it should be the same text which I see on the output screen. So we verify that the text entered should be equal to the input text. If it is not, then I'll get the error, which should be a text mismatch. Next, we close the browser. So there are a couple of testing frameworks that you can use along with Selenium. Selenium provides you to automate browsers. The testing frameworks that you can use with Selenium Python bindings are unit test. You can use py.test, nose. So these will provide you with methods like setup, tear down. Setup can include some of the block of code which will include opening the browser or navigating to the URL. Some of the basic steps that you want to perform before every test. This is the sample code using Ruby as the programming language. We're using Watir WebDriver here. So we'll also see the difference in the API, how the locator elements are different, and how you can actually locate elements. So in the first line, we say I need to require Watir WebDriver. Watir WebDriver is very easy to install. You just need to do a gem install Watir WebDriver and you're set to go. You require the gem, you require RSpec. RSpec provides a readable API to express the expected outcomes. It provides you with keywords like expect. Next, we again create a Firefox instance. This is equal to simulating a real user opening a browser. The go-to method, previously we saw that the method was get, and here the method is go to the desired URL. Then we find text area. There we had the located elements where we could only use find element by ID. Here we can actually specify what type of an element it is. It is a text area. The parenthesis includes a key value pair, which is the ID here and the paste data. Then again we send the keys. We input some text. We click on the button, which is paste button. We perform a click. We wait until present provides you an implicit time wait for the page to load. So we are waiting for the element on the next page to appear. Next we see that the text contained in the div should be equal to sample text here. And next we close the browser. The testing frameworks that you can use along with Watir are, you can use RSpec, you can use Cucumber. We'll be looking into Cucumber in detail going forward. And Minitest, test unit, which is again the Ruby's unit test module. We'll see how this works. I'll quickly run a Ruby script. The Ruby using Watir module, what we saw. So you see that the Firefox, the browser opens, it inputs some text and the text was displayed, it verified, and here we get what paste ID which was created. So here, if you do not, so what if you have a number of test cases? So it would be difficult for you to write n number of test cases and manage them. You need to have a controller which will help you control the execution of tests, provide you with the test runner and things like that. Behavior-driven testing. Behavior-driven testing is a companion of behavior-driven development. Behavior-driven development is an extension of test-driven development. Test-driven development describes that you write the test first and the application code later on. Considering this, there was an argument which came up that instead of writing tests, why don't we describe the behavior of an application? So behavior-driven development provides you that you can describe the behavior of your application in plain text, which is understandable to everybody. And behavior-driven testing is an approach to testing. So you can use the same feature files which you write for behavior-driven testing as well. Tools you can use for behavior-driven testing. Cucumber. Cucumber is a command line tool. It allows you to describe the behavior of your application in plain text. The language that it understands is the syntax that it understands is the Gherkin syntax, which says you write your test cases in the format of given, when, then. Given that you are on some page, when I perform certain actions, then I should get certain results. This is how you describe. So you can write your, so it reads the plain text as your, and executes them as automated tests. You can map your test to any of the languages, whichever you want to. Like Python, or not Python, like Ruby, Java. RSpec is another BDT tool which is available for Ruby programmers. It helps you to write the readable API, and The DSL that it involves is the keywords like describe, to describe a user, and the keyword it. It should have a last name field maybe. Lettuce is similar to Python, but here using Lettuce, you can map your code to Python. You can use this if you want to write your test cases in plain text using Python. JBehave, using JBehave, you can map your test to Java code. We'll be going a little deep into Cucumber. Features. So there are feature files which are nothing but plain text files with an extension feature. You describe the functionality or the feature in this file in one line. A feature can comprise of a couple of scenarios. A scenario is nothing but a test case. One scenario comprises of number of steps. Steps including the syntax of given, when, then. Step definitions is where you map your steps and write the actual code. Automation library is what we saw before, the Selenium WebDriver or the Watir WebDriver, which you need to actually interact with the browser. A number of scenarios can be grouped together into one feature. This is how a feature file looks like. Considering fpaste, I say the feature is to be able to paste the snippet of text on fpaste successfully. Scenario, to verify that I can paste the snippet of text on fpaste. Given that I am on the home page, when I input some text in the text box and I click on paste button, then a new paste should be created with the same text. So this is exactly what we did. And we write it in plain text, which makes it more readable and understandable to everybody. It gives you a clear view on the coverage of your tests, that yes, these are the tests that you've covered. This is how the step definition file would look like. I use the same code, but it is written differently in the step definition file. Browser.goto, which we already saw, navigates to the browser. When I input some text in the text box, I input the keywords there, which is sample text here. When I click on the paste button, the code is mapped and this step will actually click on that button. Next, I verify that whatever text I had input, does it map? Is it what was the expected or not? Using Cucumber, generating reports is very simple. It allows you to generate reports in a couple of formats. You can have reports in HTML format as well. You can get the console output. You can also generate reports in JSON. So it's very simple. You specify the format. Here we specify it's HTML and you specify the file in which you want the file name. Now I'll give you a quick demo. So here, earlier what we saw was the Firefox browser. But later, if I think that I want to integrate my tests into Jenkins, I would require the headless browser. So here for this demo, I've used Phantom.js as the headless browser. So it will not show you any browser opening, but it will, Phantom.js is a headless browser which simulates a browser in a headless mode. So we see, so this will give us the console output. So my test passed and it performed all these steps. So here, it is very readable and also it gives you a nice color coding. If the test would have failed, it would have given you an error in red. And if your steps are pending, you've not written, it also tells you that your steps are pending and you haven't written them yet. So now, we'll see how does an HTML report looks like. So we specify that the report that we want should be in the format HTML, and it should be with this file name. I run this. My test. So here it tells me that it is the running scenario was to verify that I can paste a snippet of text on fpaste. So now let's see how does the report looks like. So my HTML report would look like this. You can also save your screenshots in case a scenario is failing. It will show you the screenshots embedded in here as well, in the reports as well. Also, you can use tags to categorize your tests. Like if there's a search functionality, you can categorize certain features with tags, with a tag as @search or any other feature depending upon the requirements. As I said, we'll be touching upon the REST API endpoints. So Fedora Pastebin API provides us with some of the API endpoints. So what we'll basically do is we'll send HTTP requests and verify the status code and the content that we get. So tools you can use, curl. You could always test an API using curl command line tool if you wish to. Postman is a Chrome plugin which provides you a very easy to use interface. I'll quickly show you how the UI looks like. It's a Chrome plugin. You can input the URL here and you can send the request and it will load the data and it will give you what all details. So now there's one test case which I'm going to consider where I'll verify what data did I get and what was the name of the author. HTTP party is again Ruby gem which you can use to query the REST, to send requests to the REST API endpoints and read and get the output and verify whatever content it is. Request is a Python module where you can again use it to send HTTP requests and get the response. So for testing the REST API endpoints, I again write a sample feature which says to be able to use the API endpoints on fpaste scenario to verify that the API endpoint show gives accurate results. When I do a GET request for the show endpoint for a particular ID, which is the fpaste ID, then the status response code should be 200 OK, and I should be able to get correct details of the author and data. So now this is how I'll use the HTTP party Ruby gem. Of course, I need to require the module. So in Cucumber, I can do all these steps. The initialization part in the environment file where I can require all the gems, I can initialize my various objects and stuff like that. So we do a GET request for this URL. The format for the API so it provides you with 3 API endpoints: create, show, and list. We'll be using show API endpoint, and the format here that you can see is API format ID hash and the password. So here we use the same format for a URL. We do a GET request. We see that we verify. So my first thing is I should get a 200 OK response. If I get a 200 OK response, my test would pass and it would tell me status OK. Else it will raise an error. So API server not found. Now the next thing And the test will stop there. It will not proceed to the next step if I do not get a 200 okay. Now I get the API response. I parse the JSON. I collect the data, author and data in variables, and I verify if the author is equal to Anisha and data equal to hello API, then my test should pass, else it should again give me an error and the test will fail saying incorrect results. This is how I verify for the endpoint show. So I'll give you a demo here. So this is more quicker even because we're just sending a GET request to the endpoint, API endpoint, and we're getting the response and it's verified. Now, Jenkins. I'm sure all of you might have used some Jenkins continuous integration tool. Jenkins is a continuous integration tool. It provides you continuous integration services for building and testing software projects. So you can use Jenkins and put your tests in it and schedule your jobs depending upon your requirements. It has very easy installation. You can easily install Jenkins, install the necessary plugins. The very basic thing is you require a versioning system. So I prefer Git. You can install a Git plugin. Then if you are running a Ruby project and you're using a particular version of Ruby, you can use Ruby version manager. Plugin is there. So you can install that plugin and it will provide you the respective environment in whichever Ruby version you want to run, you execute your test. The next, if you are using Cucumber, you can use the Cucumber plugin to it will allow you to display very fancy reports, which will give you very easy readable reports. Create and configuration of your job is very easy. You just need to fill in some fields and your job is configured and put some steps. Schedule your builds. You can schedule your builds depending upon your requirement. You can also, if there's some development job, you've created a job which a build, and then there is one job which has your test. So you can always put the development job as an upstream job, and so when that job runs, post that, if that's a success, your test should run. You can always configure it like that, schedule it depending upon your requirements. Generating reports in Jenkins is very easy. It provides you, there's a plugin, Jenkins Cucumber JVM Reports plugin, which allows you to generate reports. I'll give you a quick demo for. So this is my Jenkins dashboard. I have created the job named F-based Qs and I do a build. So I'll quickly show you the configuration if you are really interested. This is how I uploaded the code on GitHub here. You see the RVM here and the execute shell steps, where I say that I want to generate the report. And now I do a build now. So it's the build number 7, which is running. And my build passed. And we'll have a look at the Cucumber reports. It will give you nice fancy reports. It will show if any of your tests failed, it will tell you the percentage of the tests which failed. So here you can have a list of features in a row and then when you go to the detailed description of a feature, you'll see the steps written here. Also, you can have embedded screenshots in case your tests fail. Same as for the, I have also created one job for the API which is here. This also runs the same, looks the same. That's it. Thank you. You can test the right things. I would just say test the right things the right way and choose a testing stack that works for you.
Just one question.
Yes.
How many tests modules, for example, Selenium can do?
Sorry?
I mean, when the Selenium uses Firefox, for example, as you showed us, how many tests can be done simultaneously at the same time?
At the same time.
Yes.
So if you want to do tests parallelly, then you should configure Selenium Grid. There's something called a Selenium Grid, which can help you run the tests parallelly.
This question, because I want to ask about your experience with Cucumber. For me, many times we say we use Cucumber because it's easier for the business and they can write the steps and it would be nice. But they actually never do. So far, I've never seen the business defining the steps. So we end up defining them. And personally, for me, it's easier to use, for example, Spock, where you can just put the labels and write it out easily, or JUnit, without all the fuss with defining the features and the steps, which are actually never used by anybody else than the QA and the development teams. Have you managed to have this kind of collaboration with the product owners, or do you find it really useful to use?
Yes, so it depends upon your requirements. If you really think that this is, if the business developers or the developers in your team are not using this and this is not fitting for you, then you can always opt out and use JUnit or whichever language you're comfortable with or whichever testing framework. But if this is working, it's really helpful because it provides you an easy to read overview about all the tests that you've written. So you can always choose whatever fits in for you best.
I think about Selenium, and I found it very interesting for testing one project, but I'm not sure if it's possible to use Selenium in case very complex JavaScript pages, or it is possible, and or there is problem when there is lots of JavaScript things added at the page.
Yes, you can use Selenium even for the complex Ajax pages as well, if you are talking about that. And if Selenium is, so there are other tools as well which are available, which can actually do the image recognition and read. So if you're not, if the source code of that application you're not able to read using Selenium, you can always jump onto the other tool, whichever you feel. Yes. But Watir, till where it's my experience, Watir WebDriver has been able to interact with almost all the elements which are there on the page, and it's really nice to use. It's a really nice Ruby gem that you can use. Thank you so much. Slides are available on this URL, and you can also provide a feedback. Thank you.